I've said this before, but the election of Mark Carney is a repudiation of Justin Trudeau. And I do think that he's more red Tory, urban, even conservative leaning, especially I think after seeing his cabinet that was recently announced. I see elements of conservatism, but also a very strong urban-rural divide. But before I get to any of that, folks, my name is Christopher Balkaran. I host the Open Minds podcast where I explore the world's biggest topics with genuine curiosity because now is the time where we talk about these topics openly without fear of judgment or being canceled. So if you're liking my content, hit that like button, subscribe, tell all your friends. This is the place where respectful conversation has a home. So Mark Carney unveiled his cabinet earlier this week. And what's interesting is the first thing I noticed was the number of cabinet ministers has been dramatically reduced. Justin Trudeau had 39 ministers. Mark Carney has 28. That's not only 11 less ministers, that's a 29% reduction. Now, I know many conservatives may not want to point to this fact, but 11 less ministers means less travel, less personal car, less hotels in all the countries that they travel to, less entourages following the prime minister around. That to me sends a clear signal from Carney to the conservatives to say, I hear you. I also agree. Less voices at the cabinet help the taxpayer. Maybe he's saying that. But also he's trying to show Canadians, perhaps especially moderates, that he understands that perhaps a bloated bureaucracy is not something Canadians want, especially at a time like now, with cost of living being what it is. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but a 29% reduction in cabinet ministers tells me this is more than just a political play. Again, I do believe this is a repudiation of Justin Trudeau era policy. But there's something else happening within the cabinet selection that I picked up on, and that is the urban-rural divide. The majority of cabinet ministers are from 3 cities, Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa. Now, I know that goes without saying that Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, Vancouver, that's the majority of Canada's population. I get that. I totally get that. But when we have this many ministers at cabinet representing urban ridings, I think, especially at a time like now where there's Western alienation and major concerns with the West not feeling included, that may actually exacerbate that issue. Think about this. There's only 1 minister from Alberta, 0 from Saskatchewan, and I think 2 from from Manitoba. So in total, there's 3 ministers representing the West, if you want to consider Manitoba the West, or 1 in Alberta. And I think that also sends a very strong message to Western Canada that, yes, we understand the divide, but no, those voices will not be part of cabinet. Again, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I do think that was a conscientious choice by Mark Carney as well. Now, I know I mentioned the urban-rural divide. I also think that's true in the types of cabinet portfolios that now exist. I said this before, but in the Liberal platform, there's a focus on AI, artificial intelligence, digital innovation. I think he's capping federal civil servants and he's introducing artificial intelligence in the way in which departments and bureaucracies operate with a plan, I'm certain, to reduce red tape, reduce bureaucracy, reduce the amount of paperwork perhaps. But also, there's now a ministry for AI and digital innovation headed up by Evan Solomon, a political rookie who also has a downtown riding, who, again, to me, that points to an urban-rural divide, because I don't think AI and digital innovation are top of mind for rural Canadians. In fact, I'll give Trudeau his flowers. I mean, there was rural development as a ministry. There was a ministry for seniors and veterans and other issues, I think, that rural Canadians would be concerned with. Especially with an aging population, it's interesting that Carney got rid of the Ministry for Seniors, because I imagine, again, as I mentioned earlier on a previous video, we spend a good portion of our budget on guaranteed income supplements and old age security and other supports for seniors. So seeing that removed is actually quite interesting. Another thing that I think Carney is thinking, again, strategically, is about stealing the moderate votes away from the Conservatives and back to the Liberals, or to the Liberals, is culture. Now, especially with Trump and the tariffs, one thing that I've noticed, that all of us have noticed, is this renewed push on Canadian nationalism being prideful that you're Canadian buying made in Canada goods. Interestingly enough, there used to be a focus on DEI. Diversity was a word that was thrown around. Now it's all under the umbrella of the Ministry of Culture and Identity, or maybe it's a department, Culture and Identity. So I think what Carney is going to do is further the made in Canada, nationalism in consumer products and buying Canadian goods, etc., which historically has been a conservative thing. And so if Carney keeps on that and does photo ops at Canadian companies, wineries, etc., doing innovative things, I think, again, that would steal away some moderates that would have typically voted conservative towards the Liberals. But those would be, again, more downtown conservatives or downtown moderates who have a plethora of choice in what they buy. But the final point I'll make about all of this is, and I've mentioned this with friends, that this election, I definitely felt like the Liberals were talking to Liberals and conservatives were talking to conservatives. I mentioned before, Polyev, in an airplane hangar or just in a hangar with a massive Canadian backdrop. I mean, that's great for your base. But when you're trying to win an election, you've got to start talking to people that aren't conservative, that are very skeptical about you and your policies. And you've got to start appealing to different heartstrings. You got to use different tonalities and appeal to different people. Maybe seeing Polyev stuck in traffic on the Gardiner or on the subway or on the streetcar in downtown Toronto and just been like, this is ridiculous. It's taking me 45 minutes to go 2 kilometers. That might have gained some votes in downtown Toronto. I don't know if it would have changed any ridings, but at least it would have seen that, hey, he's at least trying in a very liberal area to showcase conservative values. Likewise, I never saw Mark Carney in staunchly conservative or, areas that were on the fence in more rural ridings in particular. And that, I think, also contributes to this divide. I saw many Liberal candidates downtown Toronto handing out flyers, handing out cards, talking about their platforms. And I just didn't see conservatives or members of other parties doing that. And likewise, I didn't see many Liberals in rural Canada doing that as well. And so that, I think, contributes to this divide. But more importantly, Carney's cabinet is smaller, laser-focused, but also much more urban-focused on the issues affecting urban Canada. I'd love to know what you think, though. What are your thoughts of Carney's cabinet? Do you see any major red flags? Let me know what you think in the comment section below.